Our anime begins with the last moments of the protagonist's life, where he closes his eyes in a hospital room and wakes up to a chicken clucking good luck with that be our protagonist, then opens his eyes and sees a wooden ceiling. He's lying on his bed wondering if it was just a dream, and he says that it's been a long time since he dreamt about it. I don't know if it's too early to say, but it's an ice guy if you haven't noticed. Opening the door in the morning to his calm and pleasant wooden home, our hero comes across our dear Louisa Sansa. If you don't understand, I won't explain. It's by the horn. The young maid then says that she hasn't prepared any breakfast yet. I don't know about you, but that's how my grandmother started wearing dentures. If they're heavy, don't wear them. 3. But our hero, in all his politeness, says that it was his fault because he woke up too early. Unlike you. Boy, are you still asleep? The video has already started and you haven't liked it. You haven't subscribed. If you carry on like this, you won't be reincarnated as a badass in the next life. You'll either be a slime or a sales machine. Our polite protagonist then says he'd rather his maid stopped calling him master. He doesn't want that. But I didn't hear him say that he doesn't want her to wear a sexy maid's uniform. Principles, my friends. But she willingly accepts his request. While passing through the kitchen, a strange noise catches our hero's attention. One of the maids was looking after a slime and blaming herself for being careless with it. She then says she's going to roast it alive, but our protagonist tells her to just be more careful. Later, our protagonist was absent-mindedly observing the 2 moons orbiting the planet. He stretches his back because the previous night seems to have been very hard on him, and soon we meet the hardness of the night before. A young vampire with a gothic uniform and white hair. She asks him why he woke up so early, and he says that he had just woken up. And soon an angel that has made most people who have read or watched this anime feel closer to the bottom of hell lands near the protagonist. The vampire asks her what she's doing there, and she says she's come to report on her latest rounds of the place. The 2 then realize that the protagonist was distracted by looking at them, and it wasn't just the protagonist. The scriptwriter had also returned to this part 17 times. They then ask him if he wants anything. Our protagonist then tells them about the dream he had that night, that it had been a long time since he'd dreamt it. He even thought it was his own past. He soon sees a bunch of kids playing. I'm saying that Japan is bad for society. Kids that size are already furry. We soon realized that this place was more than just a house. It was a farm where several races lived, helped each other, and worked in harmony. Just note that those who aren't women are either monsters or children, so if you're a grown man, you're not welcome here. We see various animals and people living in peace, even a spider on the back of a wolf, and that seemed to make the protagonist very happy with the peace of his home. He then thought that his former self would never have thought it possible to live such a cozy life. After a lively opening, we are introduced to the trial of Mashio Hirako's soul. Hirako's now formless soul asks who the celestial figure in front of him was. The enlightened being then introduces himself as the god of that world, but Hirako is only satisfied that he has finally died. It was bound to happen one day or another. The god then says that Hirako died at the age of 39 and spent his life suffering, being betrayed by others and dying of a terminal illness. The god then tells Hirako that as a reward for such a painful life, he would give him a second chance and that he would have a healthy, disease-free body, which corroborates my theory that in the next life I'll have wings. The god then says that in fact that fucked up life, being betrayed, falling apart inside, was all part of a big mistake on his part. Then asks if Hirako considers that gesture as an act of goodwill to correct his mistakes, although he didn't understand at first. Hirako said yes and agreed, and God then asked him if he had any other requests, since he was going to send him to live a life as he saw fit. Our hero then decides to ask to be a farmer, because in his previous life, while he was imprisoned in his room, he loved his idol's farming programs, and because he wasn't very social, he would like to be sent away from civilization so that he could grow his own things in a peaceful way. God then decides to call another god, since farming was someone else's jurisdiction. After a brief conversation, God told Hirako that he would give him a healthy body, immune to disease, and as a gift from the god of agriculture, he would give him the omnipotent farming tool. He then touches Hirako's soul and tells him to enjoy his new life as much as he can. Hirako then wakes up in the middle of a forest and is amazed that his new body is so strong and healthy. He starts daydreaming about his new life, but soon realizes that that he's trapped in a forest. There are only trees everywhere, and even though he's asked to isolate himself, he thinks it's too much. He decided not to cry and started to think about what he was going to do now. He then sees that his clothes look like a villager's. He starts to look for his tool, but soon remembers to summon it. He then starts to use his great power to loosen the soil, but soon he stops and thinks that he must secure water and food first. He then starts to try to listen for any river or water nearby, but all he hears is the sound of the leaves hitting that pile of trees. He then starts walking and realizes that he hasn't even found any edible plants. In fact, he hasn't even found any grass in that forest and wonders if he's really in the very easy. He then stumbles and wonders what would happen if he encountered a monster out there. He needed somewhere to take shelter right away, so he spots a giant tree in the distance. So he decides to approach it, happy that it would be a good point of reference. As his first act, he decided that he would dig a well since he hadn't found any rivers or ponds nearby. He then uses 2 sticks to try to find water underground. There must be some explanation, but my scriptwriter is too lazy to go and look it up, and after circling the area, he throws it away, finally realizing that he didn't understand how to use that method. He then summons his tool in the form of a shovel and starts digging like crazy until he finds water. Seeing that it wasn't a good idea to dig vertically as he would get stuck in the hole, he decides to dig horizontally so that he can get back, and this time his journey was a complete success. He had finally found water. He thinks about saying it was luck, but soon comes to terms with the fact that it was God. See, you atheist, even the anime prota goes to heaven, and you don't. After securing his water, it was time to get some food, even though he wasn't feeling hungry. He wondered if it might be because of his magic tool, and afraid to go into the forest again, he decided to simply clear the clearing, and soon he found himself in front of a tree, and summoned an axe, and even remembered the right cutting technique, but it wouldn't be necessary, as a single movement felled the tree and almost crushed him to death again. He then laughs at his exaggerated strength and transforms his axe into another tool that I have no idea what it is. You don't get to the rank of anime channel editor because your forte is manual labor and tools. He then begins to work the wood with the ease of someone cutting a slice of cheese. That tool of his was helping him a lot. Even to move a huge log of wood, he carried it with a hook as if it were a sack of straw. After making a few perfectly cut boards, he thought as he looked at a standing piece of wood that in the game he was playing, this was the time to make a hut. Yes, I warn you, this series will make you want to play mine, but unlike mine, he couldn't simply erect his hut using nails or adhesives to attach the wood. He then realized that the shadow on the pillar he had built could act as a clock, and was startled to realize that the sun was almost down. He was so focused on trying out his new skills that he didn't even notice the time passing. He then tried to summon a lamp or lantern, but the tool wouldn't answer, and he wondered if it had anything to do with what he'd heard about jurisdiction. And even if he turned that omnipotent farming tool into a match, he could easily lose it or become the match girl. Reading tip: its sun playing the kawa is also culture. He then turned his tool into a magnifying glass so he could make fire with the sun, but it proved completely useless as the sun had already gone. He was then left alone in a hole in the gigantic tree, and I don't judge him. Everyone has dug a hole in the ground on the first night of the month. While he spent the night, he decided to carve a plate and a cup out of wood so that he could eat the next day. He was happy that, even though it was dark, he could see everything very well, of course because the sky had 2 moons. In the morning, he woke up, drank a mug of water, and then lit the fire, then began to clear the area and cut down several trees. While he was working, he realized that he was starting to get hungry, and to solve this, a poor angry rabbit set out to attack the protagonist. The protagonist then accidentally kills the rabbit and puts it to roast to satisfy its hunger, although it wasn't that tasty as it smelled of blood and had no salt. After eating it, he made a toilet for it, and he then enjoyed his moments in peace. But soon after realizing that he was shy, he erected a booth for the toilet as well. Soon Hirako went back to work and started plowing the field and wondered what kind of vegetable he should grow. He created several fields next to each other, and soon night came again. He was amazed at a plant sprout that grew overnight, and not just one, several others also grew. He then summons his tool and decides that he will protect his plantation from all the giant rabbits he meets along the way. He then continued digging and erecting a fence as well as a trench, and in his spare time hunting rabbits this so that he would have something to eat again in the evening. As he ate, he wondered why they came straight to him and still didn't taste good. He then went back to watering his sprouts, which were getting bigger and bigger. He was just worried about what these sprouts were going to give him, as there was a possibility that they were just plants for decoration. The next day, our protagonist erected a hut using a snap-together system, as he didn't have any nails or glue, and then made a roof out of bark. And then the days went by even longer. He was very motivated to enjoy the day until he came across two giant dogs outside the plantation, so he put up a plank to let them in. After luring them in to eat, Harako offers them a plate of meat. He had just taken down a wild boar that was trying to break down the fence. He notices that one of the dogs has a big belly, so he figures that the male dog must have been carrying it when they were attacked. Harako remembers wanting puppies when he was a child because they were good friends of farmers. Harako is then startled when the puppy begins to feel pain and soon realizes that she is about to give birth. He then wonders what to do and decides to take them into the hut, and then thinks about how he's going to warm her up. He then leaves the fire and the hut to the wolves and goes to sleep in his hole in the tree, as he didn't think it would be good for them to have a human watching them give birth. As Harako lay there wondering if he had disturbed them in any way, he noticed that the sky was darker, but he didn't know if it was because of the fire, so he approached the hut and saw his mother's dog. He saw the mother of the wolves taking care of her litter that had just been born. Joke optional. Harako then put 2 pieces of the best part of the boar for the wolves to celebrate the successful birth. Harako thought they would leave after having the cubs, but they ended up staying by his side, forcing him to create a bigger hut for himself. And soon the crops were ready to be harvested. Tomatoes. While he worked on his plantation, the dogs worked hunting animals and patrolling the surroundings. He then decided to call them Kiro and Yuki, and the puppies of a pack with Japanese names. It's worth checking out the anime. I'm not too lazy to write down all the names. Harako soon calls the dogs to eat tomatoes, and this makes him more excited to evolve, as he wants to feed them even more delicious food. The episode ends with our protagonist thinking about everything that still needs to be done, and determined to do his best slowly and peacefully. And here ends the video. If you'll excuse me, I have a game of Minecraft to play. The episode begins with the god who sent Harako to his new life wondering how he was doing. He was God, the salvation of souls, who had mistakenly granted a poor man a life of pain and suffering, and he gave him a second chance, intending to correct the mistake of having given him such a cruel life, but going to see how he was doing. The forest to which God sent our protagonist was a dangerous area, full of wicked and sordid monsters, as our hero had discovered earlier. The place was called the Forest of Death, and Harako had been thrown there alone, with only the desire to use his knowledge of agriculture to support himself. God thinks he should call him back as soon as possible, but soon remembers that he can't intervene since he's already screwed up Harako's life. For the second time, he just makes do, imagining that it won't be long before he's back there like the first time, as a soul who died a terrible death. After a very creative opening, Harako was assessing the fruits of his labor and the lessons he had learned so far. First of all, there were crops that he could grow without planting a single seed. Onions, potatoes, tomatoes, and cabbage, they were the ones he was thinking of as he tilled the soil, all thanks to his magic tool, which made everything he thought of sprout as he tilled the soil with it. Harako then realized that some of the green potatoes were exposed to the sun, and from what he had read, potato sprouts are poisonous, so he was too scared to try to eat them. Harako then decided to put some soil at the base. He then discovers something he didn't know in his old life. Farmers, with their many experiences, held a lot of wisdom. His best chance was to learn from his mistakes, just like several generations of farmers. And so it is with you, who made the mistake of not liking and subscribing. Look, in your next life, you'll come as a gay condom, or as Luffy's slipper. Be wise in choosing which one to be. And as Harako was deeply grateful to God for living the peaceful life of a farmer, he then decided to make 2 statues representing the god who welcomed him into the other world, and also the god of agriculture who gave him his omnipotent tool. Harako felt that things were becoming more and more civilized there. As he prepared his food, he thought he was living a very primitive life. His lunch of the day would be rabbit meat stew and fresh vegetables grown nearby, but it still wasn't that good, as it didn't have any seasoning or even a little salt. But he had learned that if he drained the blood after killing the monsters, he would be able to eat more easily. Even his wolves like to eat the meat without blood, which worries him that they are too spoiled. But above all he wanted was a bit of salt, so he decides to go beyond the fence of his house and plant some fruit trees. He plans to plant apples and pears so that he can improve his diet, even though they would take years to bear fruit. He then decides to be patient and play frisbee with the wolves. He strokes them, thinking how much fun it would be to live with dogs, but soon realizes that the wolves in that world have horns. And when Harako looks ahead, he sees the line of wolves waiting for their turn to play. Haraki also realized that the dogs had another function. They helped him walk through the forest without getting lost, and thanks to this, he could explore the forest even further, after which he found a river that could serve as a water source. He then wondered if he could dig a detour, as it was a 30-minute walk, so he would have to dig a lot to get water to his house and his plantation. And since he was going to be away from home for a long time, he ended up building a toilet on the construction site. The scene cuts to him carrying the wolf in a wheelbarrow that his tool has turned into, until he overturns it and realizes he has to fix the road. A little later, he creates yet more farmland. His new crops would be flowers that produce eyebright, wheat to make flour, and sugar cane. He also realized that his sprouts were ready, but he needed salt to prepare them, so there was no way to eat them. Time soon passed, to the point where Harako couldn't even remember how long he had been there. While his little wolf slept, he realized that the weather was getting colder. He couldn't stay in those clothes for much longer. He noticed snow on top of the mountains, and wondered what the temperature would be in that region during the winter. Harako had tried using the skins of giant rabbits, but they were too smelly, and he was afraid they would rot. He also starts thinking about stocking up on food and firewood for the winter, and soon his wolf starts barking in alarm. He then follows it until he comes across a fuzzy spider. At first glance, he thinks it's a bench cushion, but he soon realizes that it's actually a spider. The spider then starts weaving a thread and making a piece of fabric at high speed. He then decided to let the spider live in the giant tree. She wove clothes and got delicious potatoes, which were her favorite meal. She was even able to make coats out of the fur he had given up wearing. He then started wearing the coats made by the spider, and even the bedding, which was filled with leaves, curtains to stop the wind coming through the house. And he realizes the great leap in civilization his house has made just by having items made of cloth, and he even gave the spider a name. It was now called Zabuton. Soon winter arrived. It was very cold outside, but thanks to his preparations, he and the dogs were warm and cozy inside the house. He was cooking his potatoes, but Zabuton seemed to be hibernating or something. He hadn't come down from the tree in the last few days. As he ate his potatoes, he was thankful that the snow wasn't piling up, for if a very big snowstorm were to hit the place, his little hut would be completely destroyed. As he ate, Harako thought that he was a little worried about whether his supplies would last. Even though it would be nice to live there, he still wanted some salt, and he was also feeling lonely, and he wondered how long it had been since he had spoken to anyone. But his lonely winter soon came to an end. The cold began to subside, and the snow melted, and soon he was able to make his vegetable soup outside again. And then he realized that the wolf cubs were already grown up and ready to leave. But to his surprise, after a few days, they came back accompanied, each by a partner. Some were all dirty, making Harako wonder if he'd had a fight with a rival, and then he thought it might be a dog. But the surprises weren't over. At one point, he realized that the Zabuton had also got some puppies, and he was happy that his pets all had a family. Harako then set to work with more determination, because now he also had more mouths to feed. Soon he was surprised by Zabuton, who was sounding the alarm in his small community. He wonders if it was the fault of an intruder. He and the wolf then follow the trail of the intruder, and soon come upon a girl who is completely naked and afraid, and soon realizes the cause of the fear. She was surrounded by ferocious wolves and a giant spider. He calms her down while she calls out for help. Harako then approaches her innocently when the young girl lunges at him and digs her teeth into his neck. Suddenly, she grows up to be a legalized loli and thanks him for saving her. Harako wonders who she is and if she's a dangerous monster, but soon his wolf is fighting her until she shrinks again. Harako approaches again and asks if she is his enemy and has come to hurt him, and she says no. Still very frightened, she tells him to stop turning those dogs against her. Harako asks about his blood that she had sucked. She says it wasn't her fault. It was the dog's fault, which doesn't make make the dogs very happy to hear. The young woman seemed to be almost crying, which made Harako think she was harmless, and then she told her story, saying that their meeting was just a coincidence and that she had sucked his blood to regain her strength. She was so weak that she couldn't maintain her size or her clothes, and then he asked her why she had been attacked by the wolves, and she said that she thought she could beat one of the dogs, so she had attacked it first, feeling bad about the beating his dogs had given the young vampire. He offers her more blood so that she can regain her strength. She then began to suck on his neck. He felt a lot of blood leaving his body, but was amazed that he couldn't feel the effects. He wonders if that was the benefit of a healthy body. After satisfying herself, she praises his blood, as she had never tasted blood with so much vitality. He then wonders if she wasn't lower than last time, but she says that if she took any more, she would die. But he said it didn't matter, and that she could take as much as she wanted. She accepts and starts sucking him intensely. Later, the vampire goes to see Haraki's plantation and is impressed by how it could be in the middle of the forest. She is impressed by the plants and asks if they are for decoration. She asks him if he's ever seen a tomato in his life. He then summons a pair of scissors and cuts up a tomato for her, which she then begins to eat, loving the taste and texture. She then decides to try the other crops and proceeds to eat and pick all the fruit he had. By the end of the day, Harako was enchanted by the young woman's beauty. In the evening, inside Harako's house, the vampire was staring out a system window, impressed by how much she had learned about the variety of creatures in Harako's fauna. While pouring her a cup, we discovered that the vampire's name was Lulu. She was a vampire. She said she was doing research on medicinal plants, and she said she had a little fight with some nobles. They were trying to steal her research, and in the end they sent someone to chase her, and she decided it would be better to find somewhere to stay until things calmed down. She then heard about that forest, but it was better than she thought it would be because there was so much new to discover. She said that since it had almost been decimated by wolves, this place lived up to its reputation as a wilderness. She then asks about her tool, as she has never seen anything like it. She was very excited to learn that even though she had lived a long time, she still didn't know everything about the world, and in the end Harako had to agree it really had been a surprising day for both of them. She then asked if he intended to continue living there, and if so, if he could come and visit her, but he had an even more intense question, asking if she could stay there with him. She said she could stay to complete her research, but he asked her to stay with him forever. She said it was out of the blue, but Harako said he couldn't miss the chance, and she said that, as she had told him, there were people after her. But Harako didn't care. Even if she was a vampire, he was determined, which left her very embarrassed. He then said that the reason he had come there was so that he could live alone, but living alone wouldn't be that easy. He didn't know how many years he could last, and in the end, the young vampire falls for the player who has the champions, the gods, the wolves, and the tree in his pocket. Without hiding, she agrees, as she has nowhere else to go, but asks him to take it easy as they've only just met. He says they can get to know each other while they live together, and she says it was a very sudden proposal, but he says that because it's so lonely living there, it would be better to live with her, and she says that what he was saying meant that it meant something else, and he ends up blushing a little, but he doesn't go back and says that it was actually what he wanted, and he even bows. But she smiles and says she's already said yes, so he celebrates by jumping on her and hugging her. The next day he was working happily when he saw the young vampire watching him and saying good morning. He was very happy to be greeted by someone after so long and asked why she was so small again. She says it's for her own safety, because he wouldn't be able to touch her at that size. Little does she know that the federal police have not yet been invented in this world. She asked what he was doing, and he said he was growing sweet potatoes. He says they're easy to prepare, and soon he realizes that since she was his first resident, that made her a villager. She asks if it was already a village there, but he says it wasn't at that level yet, but there were many animals living there before her. She asked him what he thought about growing medicinal herbs. He agreed and said they wouldn't even need seeds, and so the episode ends. The episode begins with Harako breathing in the morning air, and then Lulusi comes out, still very sleepy, which raises the question that vampires don't work very well in the morning, but it was very beneficial to have her living with him. She even created a light in the bathroom. Harako is completely impressed, and she says it was just basic magic. While they were eating, Lulusi asked him if he didn't like to use it while he was cooking. He says that no, no matter how hard he looked, he couldn't find it, and Lucy gives him a very intense look. She then goes to the well tunnel with Harako and shows him that there was a very thick layer, which they could dissolve and boil to obtain salt, which makes her curious that he didn't notice since it wasn't even that deep in the earth, and Harako is quite shocked to learn that there was salt right under his feet. The next day, Lucy wakes up exhausted again and greets Harako. She asks what they're going to do today. He says he's going to check on the fruit trees, and soon we see that they're growing very fast. Not as fast as vegetables, but faster than they would if they weren't. Cultivated by a god's tool. This time he had planted oranges and peaches, but he was already planning to plant some chestnuts, and Lucy says she can't wait to taste them, and since Harako liked the tea Lucy made, he was planning to plant herbs to drink his favorite types of tea. But soon the peace is interrupted by a zabuton that was sounding the village alarm, and they rush to where the wolves were, and we see an Anya captured by spiders, webs, and surrounded by wolves. The Anya soon begins to use a light spell on the tip of her finger, while the protagonist looks at her attributes and realizes that she was healing herself, which makes him very impressed. When he turns to ask what Lulu thought, she was already trying to run away, and soon the Anya recognizes her. Apparently she was the one on Lulu's trail, and she orders her to follow. In silence, without resisting, the wolves jump on her to pluck her up. Harako takes her home, and Anya and Lulu share the unpleasant experience they had with those wolves. Lulu says that magic doesn't work on them, and they know how to dodge, and the two agree in a depressed way that going into combat with Harako's dogs is a death sentence. The angel then looks at Harako and asks Lulu who that person was. Lulu is a little embarrassed, but ends up saying that he was her husband. Now you know why she wakes up tired every day. The Anya is surprised and asks if it's true, and Harako ends up saying, while looking at Lulu's red face, that it was the first time she had called him her husband. The Anya introduces herself as Tia. I'd be my cousin's father with an aunt like that jokes. That will surely be cut. Barako asks if she was the kind of angel who serves God, but Lulu says it wasn't that important. She was just part of a race that had more physical talent than brains, and what a physique. Tia rebukes the rude comment and says that at one time, angels were the object of worship. Harako then asks what an angel was doing hunting Lulu, and she says that there was a reward for all the damage she caused in the city when she had a fit of rage, and when confronted, Lulu says that there was a very annoying nobleman who forced her to make medicines and drugs for him, and his demands got more and more insistent, so she wanted to teach him a little lesson. But Tia interrupted to say that there was nothing small about it. In fact, Auntie spent most of her time researching strange potions and concoctions, and whenever anyone bothered her, she would blow the place up. And Lulu objects, saying that it wasn't that many times. Lulu says it was just an accident, but Tia says it doesn't change the fact that a nobleman's honor was hurt. She asks her if she realizes how high her reward was, and while watching the two arguing, Harako gets the impression that they seem to get along very well. Lulu then calms down, accepting that she overreacted a little. Tia is surprised at how quickly he gave into admitting his guilt. Lulu then tells Harako that that was the reason she was at Harako's house, to get away from Tia, because Tia was stronger than her. Tia notices a big change in Lucy's personality, as she was never the kind of person to admit any kind of weakness, and we discover that Harako's dogs made her feel how weak she was, and they both agreed that such a large number of dogs was a kind of cheating. Lulu then jumps up on the table, asking if she wants to live there with them. Who said that? Women don't like polyamory. Tia is confused, and Lulu asks Harako what he thinks, and he agrees. After all, it's a great sacrifice to live in a place with no internet, nothing to do, and two hot girls. Lulu says she'll show her the countryside, and she'd certainly love to be there, and Tia, even though she's baffled, ends up accepting the offer to see the place. Lulu then shows her the vegetable field, the fruit orchard that hasn't grown yet, and finally introduces Tia to Zabuton, the big sewing spider. As soon as she looks at Zabuton, Tia faints, and Harako says that maybe she's not a big fan of spiders. Lulu says that they were about to pick some vegetables, and calls her to come along, as it would be a lot of fun. Tia then asks if Harako had planted all that, and he says yes, but Lulu adds that she had also helped out a bit. Harako then says that he was really thinking that they needed another pair of hands, and says that she would be very helpful, and Tia asks if she would also work on the farm with them. him, and Lulu confirms as she pulls her by the arm, while Tia protests about why an angel had to get her hands dirty with gardening. Harako then says that the first ones would be cabbages. Harako cuts the first cabbage to teach her and then puts the tool in Tia's hand, telling her to try it too. With some difficulty and a few groans, Tia manages to harvest her first cabbage and is impressed by how heavy they are. Harako asks her if she'd like to try it, so he washes and salts the cabbage and then serves it to Tia. After a little reluctance, Tia eats a leaf. She is then impressed by how delicious it tastes. Tia praises the taste of the vegetables, and Harako says that they taste even better when you grow them. Later that day, Tia was tired after harvesting several types of fruit. Lulusi says that she thought that was enough for today, and Harako agrees. Tia was exhausted, and Lulu says that it's good to have lots of vegetables, but harvesting them all is very hard work. But unlike Harako, Tia and Lulusi remove the dirt from their bodies just by activating a magic spell. Later that night, Tia was amazed by the taste of a strawberry, as it tasted so sweet and sour. Tia says that this agricultural time was much more satisfying than she had imagined. Lulu then held her hand and said that it was decided she was going to live with them. Tia is a little confused, but Lulu says that she had to stay because her body wouldn't be able to cope with everything on its own, whether she's talking about working in the fields or working hard at night with Harako. I'll leave up to you to interpret. Time soon passes and the three of them continue to do everything together, like working and eating, and soon Harako realizes that Tia is very useful. She can make stone golems to help build the fence. Lulu tells Tia that the farm work suits her very well, and she asks if she should take it as a compliment. Tia then turns to Harako and asks if they could plant more strawberries. Harako says he'd love to, but even if he expanded the fields, they wouldn't be able to keep up with such a large harvest. They were already operating at full capacity. Tia says that they needed help, and then starts arguing with Lulu about the two of them not working hard enough. Harako says that's not the case. Even if they grew more, they wouldn't be able to consume everything they produced. Soon Harako came across several wolf cubs that already had horns. It turned out that her wolves had children, and her wolves' children had children too, and they were those little cubs who would soon also go off to find their own partners to live with in the village. When Lulu asked if that meant no more puppies, Harako finally realized that the hut was getting too small for the dogs, so he decided to create an area just for the dogs next to the orchard. The place looked like a stable, but Harako was very satisfied with his work. Harako hadn't yet thought of a name for Kuro and Yuki's grandchildren. The more the number grew, the harder it became to give them names. Zabuton's children, on the other hand, were much more independent, and they soon created a small parachute for each of them and took off with the wind. But looking at Zabuton, a few chicks remained to stay with their mother. Tia soon caught Harako's eye and told him that she was leaving too. He asked her if she was leaving, but she said it would only be for a few days. She then spreads her wings and takes flight. Harako wonders what she's up to, but Lulusi tells him that she'll be back before he knows it. A few days later, just as Lu had said, Tia returned accompanied by a flock of young elven women. The elf says she's a high elf, and Harako asks what the difference is, and Tia asks them to introduce themselves. The young woman introduced herself as Leah, and all the others had names that also began with the letter L. Leah said they had similar names because they were all related. They had come because Tia had suggested they move there, and she asked Harako to let them live there with him. Harako didn't seem sure what to say, but Tia told him that they all share a very sad past. 200 years ago, most of their people were wiped out when they were drawn into the human war. Since then, the surviving elves have wandered the earth looking for a place to settle down and call home. Leah says that they were traveling through the forest and trying to survive, but without a place to settle, they wouldn't be able to repopulate their race, and so they all ask Harako for help. Tia said that Harado could count on them as excellent workers, and she reinforces her request for him to help her guests. Lulu also reinforced this by saying that the High Elves were a very talented race, and when Lulu asked their ages, the eldest said she was 400 years old, and the youngest 300. Harako could hardly believe that there was 100 years difference between the two. When Tia and Lulu get together to ask, Harako agrees, as long as they get along with everyone in the village, like the wolves and spiders. Soon they all happily accept, and Leah asks who the other roommates are. Soon Lulu Lulu introduces Zabuton to the elves, who faint with fear, and then introduces the wolves, who finish terrorizing them, knocking them out. Harako soon realized that the house could no longer support so many people and that the elves all wanted to live together. They needed to make a bigger house, so he started digging a ditch and also ended up making a bathroom for the girls and a garbage disposal. The fact that Harako cut down a large tree as if it were nothing made the elves completely scared. Harako realized that when it came to construction, they were much better than him. He'd even learned a few techniques, like how to process wood and fit the logs together. I know, just the log he's fitting together. Throughout the construction, he concentrated on digging holes and leveling the ground. After 10 days, the house, which was about 10 times bigger than the other one, was ready to accommodate Harako and his first harem. While Tia and Lulu were praising the gigantic house, Harako was depressed with envy, but then he smiled, saying that he had learned their technique, and they all entered the new house. The house looked like some kind of mansion, really, with a large dining room and 2 large food storerooms on the sides. The hall was lit with magic, and the bedrooms were all on the second floor, above the storage rooms. Harako smiled to see his harem doing so well. The elves soon began to help harvest the vegetables and ate the raw garlic as soon as they picked it. Harako realized that his vision of elves was completely wrong. The elf laughed and asked him how he thought someone could live without using fire, and he imagined that she was the kind of person connected to nature, who woke up with the sun and went to sleep. When it went down, she ate things from nature, loved trees, and didn't use any kind of metal. The elf asked him not to underestimate how cruel nature can be. If she tried to live like that, the forest would kill her on the spot. Leah tells him that they're going to do some mining and blacksmithing to thank him for his kindness, which surprises him that they knew they were going to make a furnace for him to melt iron, which also destroys Harako's view of blacksmith. Soon the elves had finished making a blacksmith's workshop. They were going to use charcoal and iron sand to heat the clay furnace, and they would hammer the iron to create pot. He was grateful to see that their civilization was making great progress. Leah said that the only thing they wanted to do was re-establish themselves and reproduce, and Harako says that one of the things has already been solved, the other is missing, and only Messi in 2011 was more attacking than him. Harako then told the elf, Lulu and Tia that he was glad they had come to live with him, but decided to stop. Then Leah asks him about seeing a wheat field, and he says there was one, but they've already harvested it and turned it into wheat flour. The elves then show him some yeast they use to make bread, which makes Harako very excited. Soon they were all working on the bread dough, and then they were making bread on skewers to eat, and everyone was enjoying the wonderful taste. And now that they could have bread, Harako wanted to increase the wheat fields. Harako asked for the first time who owned the land. Lulu said that it didn't have an owner, but must have been the domain of the Demon King, which scared Harako to death. Harako wonders if there's a problem because he built his house there, but Lulu says that if he built it himself, then the land belongs to him. This makes him smile with relief, and soon it's dark and the 3 girls are talking about Harako's ugliness, how to tame wolves and a demon spider, not to mention his crops that grew without seeds, and yet he knew very little about that world. He didn't even know about elves or angels. Meanwhile, Harako was making himself a cuppa, while remembering that it had been a while since he had made any progress on the construction of the canal, so tomorrow he would have a lot of work to do. Later, Harako goes out for another morning's work when he meets Zabuton, who shows him that he has captured a giant bee wearing a crown. Harako asks if Zabuton planned to eat the bee. He denies it, then asks if he would use it as a pet. The conversation makes the bee very nervous. Harako says she could be very dangerous, but Zabuton says she won't be able to resist any longer. Harako then decides to build a house for the bee ninja near the orchard. The worker bees were hard at work, while the queen bee stayed with Harako. And no, not all. The bees were such giants, only the queen was so big. The workers were of a normal size. Harako was thinking of planting some flowers for the bees to produce honey when Tia came to talk to him and flew off when she saw the giant nest of bees. Harako thought that maybe she had already been stung or something. Later, Harako was finishing the water reservoir he had dug to draw water from the river straight into it. Leah and Harako began to think about what they were going to to build to bring the water. He thought of the first constructions of mankind to bring water from rivers with stone constructions. But Leah says it would be too much work to work with stone in a forest full of trees. Leah has the idea of using wood to transport the water to the reservoir, but the water would leak through the gaps, and that gives her an idea to make an earthen compact with. Her tool, it would be as strong as concrete or stronger. Harako then used all the earth he took from the reservoir and started an assembly line to make the bricks to transport the water. He even made a sluice to catch the water at the top of the waterfall. The elves focused on the manual labor, and he concentrated on sealing the seams to prevent leaks. And thanks to days of hard work, the construction finally came to an end, and the water was finally flowing into the reservoir, and now they wouldn't have to go in and out of the well to get water every day. He soon realized that the fish were now coming to him, so he wondered how he was going to prepare them. The rabbits in that forest could be pretty vicious, but just as he was about to say that the fish looked normal, a big fish jumped out at him. After killing it, he starts roasting the fish, which leaves Tia and Lu quite surprised that Harako has managed to catch a fish from the forest of death, and they wonder if it's really healthy to eat them. Harako prepares the fish and offers it to the girls, but the girls refuse and say that he should eat it first. He then nonchalantly puts the fish in his mouth. Harako discovered that it tasted like salmon and offered it to the girls, but it was different from what they thought. It was delicious, and soon he had to make the same dish for all the elves. Later, he summoned the elves and told them that they were going to plow a rice field. So Harako started digging all day while the girls and the animals watched. The girls thought it was normal planting until he opened the sluice gate, causing the water to flood the fields to plant his beloved rice. The girls asked him if he was going to raise fish in that place. He said he would need the girls, and soon Leah was in the water. Harako hands over the seedlings for the elves to plant in the water. They soon planted the seedlings all over the field, and in time it was full of rice. Then harvest day arrived, and all the elves got down to work. Leah asked what Harako was doing, and he explained that they were going to dry the rice to remove all the moisture. Harako remembers seeing this procedure on a TV program when he was ill. When asked what they were going to do now, he says that they were going to thresh them, so he creates a tool to remove only the grains from the rice plant. Harako then shows them all how to prepare the rice grains, which leaves the girls amazed at how complex it was. Harako feels fulfilled after having the white grains, and then there's just the last step, finally cooking the rice. He then explains the right way to cook the rice. He asks Lucy to light the fire, but seeing that it would cause an explosion, he asks her to light just a small flame. She agrees, while the elves hide and talk about what kind of food he's making. Soon he takes the lid off the rice, and it's already very white, but to Lulu's disappointment, they still can't eat it. The elves watched as he made several rice dumplings. Lulu and Tia took the dumplings, still wondering why he had worked so hard to make them. Tia said she would try it after Lulu, and she took a big bite. She then tells Tia that it was completely safe to eat, which gets the angel excited. All the girls kept praising Harako's fish cake, and when he finally went to try his own, there were none left since all the elves had taken one. After that, Leah and Harako were planting more rice seedlings until Harako decided to take a break. All the girls cleaned themselves with magic, no matter how muddy they were. Only Harako had to clean himself manually, so he began to draw a plan for a bathtub to wash in and explained to the girls that the human body needed hot water to wash. The girls recommended that he take a bath in the river, but he would freeze to death in winter. Harako was more determined than ever to make his bathroom, and soon the constructions began, such as the furnace, the platforms, and the bathtub. Lulu said that things seemed to be going well, but Harako had something on his mind. He liked taking the water out of the river, but wondered if it was okay to throw dirty water back into the river. Then Tia entered the conversation and said that if he was worried, he should just use some slimes. The slimes ate waste organic matter and then purified the water. Harako had a view that slimes were fragile-looking beings who caused the deaths of many adventurers, but Tia says that's not the case at all. She then flies off to catch some. She soon brings him a small slime. Harako then asks Zabuton and Kuro if they would eat the slime, and they say no. Then he puts some slimes in to purify the sewage channel, and Tia says that he could put some slimes in the toilet, but Harako says that he wouldn't have the courage to drop some mud on the poor slime. So now that the purification problem problem had been solved. He was preparing the firewood when he found a mushroom in the middle of the wood. Harako was afraid to eat any mushroom he found in the forest for fear of it being poisonous, and all the girls had different opinions about mushrooms being edible, so he starts trying to grow mushrooms on logs, and in the late afternoon he calls all the girls together to inaugurate the bath. After all, what better way to bathe than with a bunch of women? Leah then raises her hand and says it would be better if he showed her the right way to use it. He takes off his clothes and puts them in the hamper, then rinses himself off and relaxes in the hot tub. Harako only remembered that he hadn't had such a good bath in years, as he wasn't allowed to bathe in the hospital, and after waking up from his memory, he gives the girls permission to try it too. Without even thinking twice, they took off their clothes, and soon Lulu and Tia were already in the tub, and shortly afterwards they were all in the same tub. And when he thought about making a men's room, the girls said he couldn't have a bathroom just for him. The next day, he goes to the log and sees that his mushrooms are just about ready to be picked. He thinks he could make a pot of boiled mushrooms. Later, Harako comes across a group of young elves surrounded by wolves. All the elves started with the syllable la. When the elves were about to say that their names were similar because they were related, Harako already knew, which surprised them. Harako asked if they would like to live with them, and Leah said yes. They had lived with her in the village, but it had been 200 years since their groups had seen each other. Thinking that they must have been through a lot, Harako accepts them as part of his village. Leah said that they were going to make a house for them and thought that they should also make some improvements to his house, and Harako agrees that it must have been getting too tight for all of them. The new members offer to do the work as well, and Harako says that all help is welcome. Then he leads the elves to work in an optimistic and cute way, saying that they will settle down so that they can reproduce, but that part still worried Harako a lot. And then we get a surprise when we see that Kuro is a rational being, and while watching Harako and the girls, we see him tell us about his past. Kuro lived his life alone. He had never lost a fight to another male. He planned to live his life as he pleased, just eating and fighting. But then everything changed when he met a female, the canonical event in every man's life. No Karin. Kuro didn't even stand a chance against her. After taking a beating from his little she-wolf, they started traveling together, and after a while his belly started to grow a lot. It wouldn't be long before she had children of her own. In the forest, there were animals that led the wonders of their cubs, but when Kuro saw that the life he wanted would no longer be the same, he didn't think it was so bad. But their luck ran out when they came across a giant bear, the king of the Black Forest. In the end, he turned his back and left, but they were so wounded that they couldn't even hunt for food. They became so weak that they were driven away even by their former prey. And soon they reached the center of the forest. Kuro always thought that people who lived in the forest kept to themselves and never stayed in one place for long. He wondered how someone with such a weak appearance could survive so well there alone, and soon Kuro found out. He felt unlimited power coming from that tool. Kuro felt that his life was over and was already resigned until he met Harako. He shared the meat of the prey he had killed with Kuro and his female. Soon Kuro's little ones were born, and without any desire to fight back, his female and he turned Harako into their master. He gave them a name, cleaned meat for them, and cooked it with vegetables. Soon Kuro's family was quite large, with children and grandchildren. Kuro saw his master become the leader of a large pack, and looking at the women who followed his orders, Kuro no longer believed that he was just a weak human as he had thought. Kuro was only concerned with the fact that Harako didn't know where he came from. He was a being called a hellhound, a very deadly being. But Kuro knew that he didn't care and would be fine, and he was also grateful that his good luck had led them to such a kind human. The day began with Harako and the girls staring at their new home, much bigger than the other one. It was practically a mansion. Leah had even asked Harako to dig the foundation of a basement for their house. She was quite bossy when it came to construction, even asking him to cut large beams. Harako had in mind that it would certainly be big, but it was surprising, looking at its size from the outside. Lucy and Tia also helped him make it. They said it met the criteria of all the residents, and Leah says it wouldn't seem fair housing if he didn't have the best house. And then they go inside so that they can show Harako the house. The architecture of the house was really surprising. The elves knew how to build at the level of a trained engineer. Harako says that the structure looked a lot like Leah's house, and she says that they designed the house so that everyone could get together to talk. shock. The girls soon take Harako to her room. At the back there was a kitchen, and next door there were some stoves, and then they went down to the basement, which served as a storage room for food and firewood. The house also had a second floor and a dormitory with several rooms. Soon he came across a room with a lock and let his curiosity speak louder. So he opened the door to find out what was there, and there was actually a double bed which he decided to ignore. Auntie says it was very exciting to finally see their new home. Harako smiles as he looks at the big tree. It was as if she had been looking after them forever. Leah told Harako to tell them after the winter if the house had any defects so that they could fix it up. In addition to the statues of the gods, Harako decided to make statues of her dogs and put them on the doors of her house as protectors. Back at the house, Harako was gathering ingredients when Lucy and Tia arrived. They looked hungry, and Harako said he was ready to try a new dish. It was curry. Neither of the girls had ever heard of it. Tia asks if it's a difficult dish to make. Harako says it's easy, but it takes hard work to really master it. The girls were startled to think that he was talking about cannibalism, but then they went out to harvest their crops, and Lulu and Tia were impressed by some of the grains that they hadn't even seen Harako plant, and he says that he worked on it little by little. Harako says that Lucy doesn't recognize some plants because many don't grow well in snowy climates. They only grew there because of his magic tool, which made even tropical fruits grow in a snowy region. Hikaru then decided to start gathering the spices they would need to harvest the curry. He starts showing the spices and their names to Tia and Lucy. Soon they see a spice called cumin, which blooms from a flower. Then Harako introduces turmeric, the ingredient that gives the curry its color, and the roots are the part that interests them. Harako asked the girls to dry the root. The next ingredient was coriander seed. Tia said that coriander had a very pleasant smell. Soon Kuro arrives asking for coriander, but as soon as he smells it, he and his female are frightened off by the smell. This makes Lulu and Tia excited that there is something that can keep the wolves out of hell. Soon, Harako also introduces cayenne pepper and black pepper. These were all the spices he would need, so he collects them in bags. Harako remembers that in his old life, men who ate curry with spices had a reputation for being a pain in the ass. But soon he puts all the separate ingredients on the table and picks up a knife to start preparing. Soon Harako saw Leah standing in front of him. She was to be his new helper, as the other girls were researching a powerful magical talisman. He accepts and lights the fire, then begins to prepare the curry, then adds rabbit meat for frying, and then follows the step-by-step instructions for preparing a good curry dish. The elves and wolves watched from afar, while Leah followed Harako's orders attentively. Harako soon wonders if he's forgotten something, and then remembers. Harako soon realizes that he has forgotten nam. He wonders if he should just make it with rice, but he wanted it with nam, so he'll have to figure it out. He then counted out how many portions he would need to make, and then gave a roll to Tia. The process was the same as making bread, but he had to stretch it out like a thread. Then Leah asks if they have to bake it, and Harako says yes, they should bake it inside the stove, but as he remembers seeing people baking it outside, he'd like to give it a try. As Lucy and Tia stroll around contemplating the power of coriander, they spot some elves and wolves snooping around behind a bush, and they smell something very appetizing coming from there. Tia felt her stomach growl, while Leah stood in front of a mountain of roasted nam. After finishing the last one, Harako turned to the curry, which was almost done. Soon everyone gathered around as Harako stirred the curry. The girls were reluctant to try the curry, so Harako taught the girls how to eat it. As soon as he tastes it, Harako congratulates himself on having made a real curry. It was really very tasty. The girls tried it with trepidation, but as soon as the spicy flavor appears, they are all delighted with the texture and proportion of the taste. While Lucy thought it would be a good idea to do some research, the other girls just concentrated on getting a taste. Harako was happy and said that since the flavor was unique, it would be fine if any of them didn't like it. But as soon as she turned around, they were all lining up in front of the pot to try it again. As soon as they smell the curry, Kuro and his wife run away in fear of the smell, which makes Tia and Lulu very excited. Harako passes the piece of nam into the dirty pot. They had eaten it all just like last time. They were all satisfied that they had eaten enough. Harako was proud of himself for having memorized the recipe, but they were still hungry because they had eaten almost nothing. Winter was coming soon, and when it started snowing, they would would spend every day indoors. He then fills the cellar with firewood to last the winter, and soon he takes a basket of potatoes to Zabuton and her children. Whenever winter comes, she goes into hibernation at the top of the tree. Zabuton soon took the potatoes and sent several blankets to Harako. Leah and the elves were still working at the forge, and Tia and Lulacy were preserving the food, seasoning and drying the meat in a magic smoker. Kuro and his family would also be unable to hunt during the winter because of the snow, so the intention was to preserve as much as possible to feed everyone. Harako had even made a makeshift fridge which would work in the snow. As he watched Lulacy having fun with her magic, Harako thought how much he would like to be able to use magic. He put out his hands and tried, but nothing happened. It was soon nightfall at Harako's house, and Lulacy was explaining the basics of her magic. Harako tried to summon Tia's golems, but Lu explained that they were very difficult to use even for other users. Harako says that Tia is incredible for being able to summon more than one, but Lucy, jealous, says that she can also use a lot of things. Harako says that they were all pretty amazing, and he was grateful to be able to count on them because all he knew was gardening and cooking. Lucy then says that in that place he was the most amazing. Lucy says that for as long as he had, living like that in the forest wasn't something anyone could do. Harako then thanks her for the compliment, while she says again that he was the only one who could do something like that. Soon the night was gone, and the snow began to fall. Winter had arrived. The snow had accumulated, and with the boredom of staying indoors, Harako ended up carving various types of board games from chess to mahjong, and then he began to explain the rules of a black and white game called Reverse. Le and Tia were amazed at its simplicity, and soon Le challenged Tia to a game of chess. Harako watched as Tia dominated the match, and soon Le threw the board in Tia's face, trying to make it look like an accident and failing badly. But then Tia smiles and raises her finger, returning the pieces to their original places. Harako leaves the room while the two are fighting, and soon sees Leah arguing with another elf, Kira. Then starts giving hints, and Harako is surprised that his wolf has understood the rules. Soon, he had two wolves fighting, and to his surprise, they were playing for keeps. Lucy soon decides it would be a good idea to challenge Kuro to a match. Lu then sits down, and soon becomes depressed at having lost to Kuro and not being able to hit the reset button without being shattered. Harako soon starts a game of mahjong against Kuro and Leah. Harako even thinks about avenging Leah, but in the end, he and Lu are in the same depressed corner. While Zabuton was hibernating, Harako decided to play a game of bowling to amuse himself, and soon knocked down 8 pins, but they were too far apart, and with one move Harako managed to knock down the other 2. Lu then lands a perfect strike, but she continues to be totally defeated in the mind games. Soon the snow has melted and spring has arrived, and Harako steps out of his house into a beautiful sunny morning. He is soon greeted by Tia and Lu, who ask him what he's going to do today. Harako decides that they should start planting and wake up the Zabuton. But then Spider sounds the village alarm, and everyone wonders where and who it is. Tia seemed to know the dragon as a wyvern, and it startled both her and Lucy to hear the dragon's thunderous roar. The wyvern continued to approach while the three of them were completely paralyzed. The great dragon roared, causing the air to shift, almost lifting Harako and the girls off the ground. Harako wondered what to do. He hadn't expected a monster of that level to appear. He wondered if he should try to push it away, or perhaps try to ignore it so that it would go away. But soon the dragon began channeling its power to shoot out of its mouth. Lu and Tia, sensing the danger, immediately erected a barrier. The dragon soon fires its blast of power, but Tia and Lu manage to protect the entire sacred tree with a large barrier. Leah orders the elves to start putting out the fires. Harako was at a loss for action. Leah and Lu were trying to find a way to deal with the situation while the elves put out the fire. Harako wondered if they should try to escape from the forest, but it would be no use. She would chase them through the skies. He needed a way to get her away from that place. Soon Harako's magical tool transformed into a spear. Unlike its previous forms, which were only gardening and construction tools, Harako doesn't even bother to question it. So he wraps up his spear and throws it at the dragon. The weapon crashes into the dragon's barrier, and the two powers begin to clash until Harako stands out and hits the dragon's wing, causing critical damage. The spear then returns to his hand, and he throws it again, bringing the dragon down for good this time. After putting out the fire and seeing that there was no damage to any buildings, they continue through the forest to find the dragon's body. Harako asks if there are any more creatures of this type. Lu says that there are, but bumping into one is a rare event and very unlucky. Harako then asks if someone could have sent that dragon to attack them. Tia says that it wasn't likely. Even if it obeyed someone, they wouldn't send such a valuable creature on their own. Most likely, it was acting on its own. So Harako accepts that it was just a rare accident. Harako then asked if they could eat its meat. Soon, Harako began to fry the wyvern's meat, which was seen as a very rare delicacy, since no one could kill one without being roasted alive. While everyone was enjoying the meat, Lulasi asked Tia if she could stop Harako's spear, but Tia says she couldn't. The spear penetrated 3 layers of barriers and hit the beast full in the chest. Lu thinks that it may have just been a stroke of luck, as it was with Kuro and the other beasts, but Harako asks what they were talking about. His aunt disguises it by saying that they were thanking fate for being able to enjoy their food. Far away in a gloomy fortress, 3 people were terrified to hear that the wyvern had been shot down, one of whom wanted them to mobilize their entire military force. Beazle, one of the 4 generals from Hell, said that the wyvern had been attacked from the ground and killed with just 2 attacks. Gratz and Raiden, the other 2 generals, couldn't believe that something like this had happened. The demons were terrified. There was no way they could fight against something so powerful. They had just approved that year's budget. The oldest of the generals said it was his duty to deal with the situation before fear spread to the citizens. One of the generals even decided to resign, leaving the others at the table. A long way away, in the lair of Drime, one of the guardian dragons, a huge dragon, asks a human-looking being called Gucci if he had heard that. He says he saw it with his own eyes. The dragon then asks what would happen if he received that attack. Gucci says that the attack would pierce him cleanly and says that it would be completely foolish to attack. The dragon agrees. Back in Harako's territory, he was standing in front of a vineyard thinking that the wyvern meat was good, but there was still one thing missing from his meal. They were going to make alcohol, and as it would have to be from grapes, the drink would be wine. And since wine was a drink that existed in that world, they were all very excited to make it, and harvested the grapes very quickly. The next step was to crush the grapes, so he got the girls to stomp on the grapes while he was in charge of changing the barrels as they filled up. Barrels made by the elves, since he still didn't know how to make barrels that wouldn't leak. Soon the girls start stomping on the grapes. Harako tells them to move in circles, and soon Tia, Leah, and another elf are walking. Soon Tia stumbles and falls on top of Leah. Tia then has the idea of devising a way to do this in sync, and soon the elves are old enough to sing a song to encourage them, and soon everyone is into the production, dancing and singing happily as they trample the grapes. Tia then calls Lulu to join in the dance, and she drags Hikaru along to be part of it too. Soon the day came to an end, and he had gathered enough barrio. Harako now just had to wait for the yeasts on the grape skins to ferment everything for him. He wondered if he had done the right thing, as they had 16 barrels, and Lulu said that everything was fine. Leah said that they would drink it all at once, which worried him. Meanwhile, the god who sent Harako to the forest of death was being scolded by the goddess of agriculture for having punished him even though he was innocent, and then tried to fix it on the sly and ended up sending him to a horrible forest. She also gave him a spear that was a replica of the sacred Grime spear. The god says that he only uses it as a farming tool, and even then he had asked permission beforehand, but she says she didn't know he was going to give it to a human. It would take all his life force, but the god said he was fine because he had given her a super healthy body that healed quickly, so the tool wouldn't kill him before he could heal himself. And what made the goddess angrier was that the statue that was supposed to be her was simply an old man, and as punishment, the goddess grounded her father for 300 years. Back in Harako's land, Zabuton sounds the alarm again, and we see a young girl tied up in webs and frightened. Harako feels a sense of deja vu, as this is how she met Lu. Lu recognized the girl as Flora, which explained to Harako the similarity between them. Flora had followed her sister when she heard that she was being chased by the evil angel. We know as Tia, who was not at all happy to hear that comment. Flora seemed to be a relative of Lu's, so Harako invited his sister-in-law to relax and stay with her for a while. Flora still couldn't believe that Harako was her sister's husband and thought something was wrong, but as soon as she saw the furious look on Kuro's face, she instantly regretted her speculations. Lu says that Harako was the leader there. He was the master of the Hell Wolves, and had even killed the wyvern. His sister-in-law then apologizes, and he turns to Kuro and says that he didn't know he was a wolf, and asks what the hell part meant. And Kuro immediately starts spewing fire out of his mouth, leaving Harako amazed, Kuro full of himself, and Tia and Lu impressed that he had lived with Kuro for so long and didn't even know what he was. Later that evening, Harako prepares a feast for Flora, his sister-in-law. Harako asks her to see it as an apology for what Kuro and the other wolves did to her. They prepare a dinner that amazes Flora. She asks him what the soft white stuff is, and he says tofu. He then begins to do various things in his world that leave her in doubt. He begins to explain how soy fermentation works. Seeing her eating and opening her system window, Harako soon notices the resemblance between Lu and her younger sister. After a few days, it was time for Flora to go home, and she left excitedly to make preparations to move. A month later, she was back with a battalion of maids, and Anne, one of the maids, introduced herself and asked Harako to use them in any way he liked. If Harako puts in one woman a year, he'll still have to put another 2 months on his calendar. He soon realizes that they've brought 2 normal cows, which makes him very excited because now they'll have milk to make cheese and butter. Tia soon realized that with Flora's arrival, the race of angels was a minority in the city. Behind the vampires and ogres, the elves, the wolves, and the spiders, she was the only angel. Tia then approaches Harako and says that she needs to go out for a while and then takes off. We soon see the cow clearly distraught at being watched by 5 hellhounds. Then Auntie returns with 3 more angels and some lizard men. They are the only men in the village, and probably don't even have the same magic tool as Harako. The 3 angels were called Granmaria, Cudel, and Coron. Daga was the representative of the lizard men. Harako asked if she also spat fire, but Tia denied it, but they did lay eggs, and that made Harako very grateful. Thanks to Tia and the others, the place was becoming more and more civilized. Later, Anne was ordering the Flora maids to clean the rooms. The maids were a breed of Oni, with a horn in the middle of their foreheads. You may have seen similar horns in Dragon Ball Z or Yu Yu Hakusho. Since they were professionals, they were doing Harako's chores even faster and better. But when it came to cooking, they weren't good with dishes they'd never heard of. So Harako concentrated on teaching them all about cooking and heat control, and soon they were preparing something for him. We also see that they had unusual strength. They were as polite as they were powerful. As he leaves, Harako sees Tia ordering the angels to go and patrol the forest, one going in each direction, she asking them to be attentive to everything, even the slightest movement. The angels soon split up to patrol, and in construction, Harako had a new heavy labor force, the lizard men. This gave him time to think about the exponential growth of his population. Soon Leah arrives and says she's found more of her friends while wandering in the forest, and soon we see another crowd of elves. Harako wonders about male elves, but Leah says that no men have survived, and we know it's not your author, nor is it to make a harem. The elves say they could do more right now, but Harako just wishes them luck and chooses not to ask how they're going to do it. A few days later, Harako calls all the villagers to her house. All the girls speculate on what it could be, and soon Harako appears. He apologizes for calling you, but there was something he needed to talk about. Harako tells you that he has decided to give the place a name, because it started out as just a small hut, but already had several houses, plantations, and other buildings. So he wanted to give it a name so that it would officially be a village. Lulu recommends that he give it his name, since he was the founder, but he thinks that Harako Village or Mashio Village wouldn't be very good for a village. Anne then recommends naming it after the forest, but Harako thinks Death Village is too scary and gloomy. Zabuton then points to the door, and when he opens it, he finds himself facing the sacred tree. Harako then decided to gather everyone from outside and decided that the place would be called Teiju Village, which means big tree in Japanese. Harako then throws a party and serves the first batch of Teiju wine. Everyone celebrates by calling Harako mayor. Harako doesn't understand, but Lu quickly says that no one would be better for the job than him. Harako then raises his arms, gladly accepting the position. The night ended in celebration. Even the wolves were overturned, and Tia, who was drinking with Lu, calls Harako to the seat next to her. Since Lu was completely out, he sat down next to her, seeing that she was drunk. He says he was thinking about how happy he was. Everything seemed like a dream to him, but Tia says it wasn't a dream and offers a toast to the Teju village, and Hirako happily toasts, making Lu wake up wanting to toast too. Hirako thought that perhaps because he hadn't drunk wine for a long time, it tasted much better than he remembered. He happily watched the party while thinking that he would do his best as mayor. At one fine day, everyone was working on the harvest, as the number of villagers had increased considerably between winter and summer. Everyone was doing their bit, both harvesting vegetables and animal foods such as milk and eggs, and even though he was the new mayor of the village, Hirako was still reaping the fruits of his labor like an ordinary worker. Soon the Zabuton signal began to ring again, and an angel descended from the sky to warn them that they had a messenger from the demonic realm outside the village. Beazle introduced himself to Hirako while the angels surrounded him and watched his every move. Beazle asked for an audience with the person in charge, and seeing that it was his first job as mayor, Hirako introduced himself. The man was doubtful at first, but when he was sure, he summoned a box with a bottle, saying that it was a gift to commemorate their meeting. Hirako happily accepts the gift, and Lu gets excited about more drinks. Beazle says that the Demon King has sent a message to Hirako. He would like to discuss the status of the place. Hirako remembers that Lu had mentioned that the property technically belonged to the Demon King. Hirako then begins to wonder if the Demon King wanted him to pay taxes for the time he spent on his land, or even to expel him from his land. Hirako wondered if it was a good idea to ask Tia and Lu for advice before doing anything, but then he decided that this was his first test to be a good mayor, so Hirako said that if he was willing, he would offer a share of his harvest, and the percentage he would offer was 10%. This surprises Beazle, and Hirako even asks him if he's offering too low a price, but Beazle accepts without reluctance, which leaves Hirako a little surprised. Later, Hirako was signing his contract for the taxes they will pay on their harvest, but it was only limited to what they would grow in his fields. He wouldn't give them the eggs, honey, or alcohol he produced. If the Demon King's people were interested in the other things they produced, they would have to come up with trade deals. Hirako ended up feeling very aggressive in his negotiations, so he decided to send him a gift. Beazle then sets off in a summoning circle. Hirako wonders if he did the right thing, but Lu says that he did, because if they were going to pay taxes to the Demon King, they would now be under the protection of the Demon King. But Tia was still surprised by the 10% rate, since the usual rate was 50 to 60% interest. She also said that it was a great idea to ask them to come and look for their share, as they would be obliged to recognize their residence there, and above all, the fact that they only went there once a year would make it easier for them not to know how much they produced all year. This meant that they had just bought the protection of the Demon King for the trifle of 10% of their production. Lu also celebrated the gift, an omnipotent medicine that could be drunk or applied. In the Demon Kingdom, the three demons were surprised that Hirako had submitted to their military force. Beazle says that he had his suspicions, but had no choice, since the vampire princess and the angel of annihilation were there. This reveals the demon's terror of the great sage Lulacy and the strongest of all angels, Tia. And as if the fear wasn't bad enough, Beazle says that he had an army of high elves and a pack of hell wolves. Even the guides who took him to Hirako were a trio of murderous angels. Beazle says it was their idea to be protected by the Demon King's force. Beazle says that he couldn't back down, because if he did, they would become his enemies. Beazle says that the good thing was that the negotiations took place peacefully, and they even gave him a gift. Frightened, they open the gift and find a box of fruit. One of the generals eats it to make sure it's not poisoned, while fighting over the fact that his colleague was eating without any fear. Beazle notices something strange. The cloth in the box was made of silk from the great demon sword. He remembers that one of these spiders fought one of the Demon Kings to a standstill. On hearing this, Randon resigns his post. Back in Taju village, the great dragon Drime introduces himself to Hirako as the true ruler of the dragons. Drime lowers his head, and his servant brings out a box with a gift, a sword with a scabbard. It looked very expensive. Hirako then asks the reason for his visit to Teju village. The servant tells him that Drime's lair was to the south of the forest, but even though they were far away, they could consider themselves neighbors, so they came for a formal greeting. Hirako asks if Drime was bowing for some reason. The servant then asks the great dragon to pull himself together. Hirako said that since he was there, it would be polite to invite him in, but he couldn't since he was practically the size of the village. The servant then asks the dragon to change shape, and the dragon takes the form of a nobleman. The man presents himself normally, still very embarrassed, but as night fell, the drink washed away his shame, and soon Drime was happy and toasting. Drime didn't even want to go home, but his servant reminded him that there would be many people upset with him if he didn't protect his home. Drime argues that he could intercept any attacker, but his servant says that he would upset the residents of Teju village. The servant then invites him to go while everyone is happy. They've even given them lots of presents. Drime soon says goodbye and teleports away, and soon his servant transforms and goes on his way too. Harako soon realized that he had to start thinking about how the village would deal with visitors and whether or not it would receive guests. Things were getting more difficult than he thought. The next day, Harako gathers two elves together and says that he's been thinking about a few things and that they shouldn't keep visitors waiting at the village entrance when they greet them. But he also said that he didn't feel comfortable inviting them into his home. He then decides to make a house for 4 people to receive the guests. Leah says that it might not be enough, as anyone entering the forest would have to cross the mountains and the forest and would have to travel in a large group. They then decide to make a house with an open space for parties and the second floor for the guest room. Soon, all the elves organize themselves to make the welcome house. After that, Harako gathers everyone at the entrance to the village to work on the way they were welcoming their visitors. The 3 angels who were supposed to be looking after the area were actually capturing the visitors and bringing them there, and whenever the Zabuton sounded the alarm, everyone put up their weapons for the coming battle. So Harako created a new visitor signal for Zabuton to ring the bell. They then discussed how they would welcome the visitors, and in the end decided to have a welcoming party with a member of each species. As for the flora, it was their job to keep an eye out for visitors at dusk, as the vampires could go for days and nights without sleeping. All their preparations were soon put into practice when Zabuton sounded the call for visitors. It was a band of furry men. The leader introduced himself as Garf. He said he was from a place east of the mountains. They wanted to establish a relationship with his village. Lu immediately took the lead in welcoming them, and before taking them to the guest house, Lu asked if that was all of their group. Garf agreed, prompting the vampire princess to say that they would treat the others as enemies. Harako doesn't understand at first, but soon the wolves capture some furries in the forest. Garf apologizes and says it was just a few stragglers. Lu warns him that it was dangerous. He had to keep his group together. He also had to behave while they were there, because there were such dangerous people in the village that even she didn't want to face them. Garf gave his word, and they were soon welcomed by the Oni maids and settled into the house. Then Tia and Lu closed the doors from the outside, saying that when someone comes to establish a relationship, they always bring a gift, like the dragon or the demon general. Tia says that if they don't follow the rules, they won't get the normal treatment a visitor receives. The fact that 2 troops were hiding in the woods worried Tia and Lu, so they lowered their level of hospitality. Harako asks if the angels haven't seen the troops, and Tia says she'll punish them for letting it slip by. While Harako was looking at the food, Anne asked if the food wasn't to her liking. Anne said that there was a difference between the food she served Drime and that of the beastmen, since unlike the dragon, they didn't bring anything. Harako wasn't very happy about decriminalizing his visitors just because they hadn't brought anything. Lu and Tia told him to get rid of those emotions. Their goal was to find out what they wanted there. Harako managed to get the maids to serve 2 glasses of wine for each person, even though everyone didn't like the idea at all. Harako soon approached them and asked what kind of place their village was, and they told her that the place was known to have existed for 1,000 years, but Garf believed that it had only existed for 500 years. The village, which was mostly made up of beastmen, was made up of people who made their living by hunting or mining, and, due to some trading problems, they were looking for other villages to trade with. Garf says he heard about his village from one of the Demon King's people. Then one of the beastmen is asked why they were hiding, and he says that they needed to stay in case something happened, to have someone to run back to the village and tell what they heard. And Harako is proud that Tia is doing a good job of gathering information. But the very next day, everything became clear. They really just wanted a business relationship with the Teju village, but they didn't want money. They wanted to trade for physical goods, since they didn't use coins in their village. He also asked Harako to go to his village to negotiate, as they were having a lot of trouble trouble getting through the forest. Harako then thought he could use Kuro and the wolves to carry goods on a sled, so he accepted the beastmen's conditions. The beastman then offers paints, cutlery, glassware, and other things. Harako accepts everything without hesitation, and all the beastmen ask for is food, and so began Taju Village's business relationship with the beastmen. When they say goodbye, Garf apologizes about the gifts, as he didn't know he had to bring one until that day, since his village didn't have such a custom. Garf promises that he will bring something next time, and Harako says that it doesn't matter how much it is, but the thought behind it. Time soon passed, and the day came to go to their village to negotiate. Harako wanted to go, but the girls said it seemed too bad to send their superior there immediately. Tia says that the draw they made was fair, so she would act on his behalf on that occasion. The journey was supposed to take 10 days, but Drime offered to ride there for a barrel of wine, since, after his first visit, Drime had become a frequent visitor. He always brought weapons, potions, and treasures as gifts, and it was Drime himself who offered to take the others to the village, so Harako simply accepted. Drime soon took off. The beastmen were waiting for them, wondering if they were really coming, but soon they spotted a gigantic dragon approaching, but they soon saw that it was Tia. Back in Teju village, Tia and Drime and the lizards report to Harako, who asks how it went. Tia says that they managed to exchange everything they took because they loved everything. At first the beastmen were scared, but then she cut up the apple and made free samples, and soon everyone was eating. Drime was sorry that his wine had been sold too, but Harako promised him that he could drink more at dinner, and Drime was soon happy. Again, Tia soon says that there were 20 people from the village who wanted to come in live. In Teju village, all of them young women, to the surprise of 0 people. Harako then asks them to send at least 2 young people to ensure the future of the village, and to make sure he doesn't get a fracture from Snoo Snoo. And soon the beast women come forward, a little shyly, asking him not to abandon them. He looks like my cat before I leave the house. Harako said that his bed was ready and told her to take her time and get used to it so she wouldn't have to worry about being abandoned. Harako then asks for the men he asked for, and they soon reveal 3 children with animal ears. I have an opinion on why they put those 3 in there, but I'd rather shut up. Let's continue with the video. We soon see the elves holding back so as not to commit a crime, and Harako says that in 10 years' time he was counting on them to take the village forward. Harako tells the young furries that if they need anything, all they have to do is ask Lemulias, the only housekeeper in charge of the accommodation. The girls were soon shown to their room and were very happy with the fluffiness of their beds. They were soon given food and a hot bath. They thought they would be treated badly if they went to live in the Teju village, so he decided to show them that it wouldn't be like that. Lemulias says there won't be any problems, except that they faint whenever they see one of Harako's pet monsters. Harako and the girls watch the boys playing, and when one of them falls, Harako discovers that the race of beastmen can also use magic. Harako then asks if he was the only one there who couldn't use magic. Harako soon discovers that all the angels can use magic, as can all the high elves and all the oni and lizard men. Even their animals can use fire and water magic. To Harako's humiliation, even his slime could use fire magic, but the beast woman said that the boys didn't know how to use it either. But Harako had the impression that he would soon be surpassed by them. Harako then decided to concentrate on what he could do for the time being. But soon an explosion caused the earth to shake, and an angel came down saying that there were 2 creatures facing each other, a bear and a giant snake. The angel thought that if this continued, the crops could be damaged. Then Harako had an idea and asked if they could eat one of the 2. Harako wondered what bear meat would taste like while the Anya carried him in her arms. Soon they see a giant bear that probably beat Kuro, and a gigantic cobra. The Anya asks her to go for help, but Harako just asks her to put him down. The Anya then comes down, and with one blow, Harako puts the giant bear on the ground. Harako thought that it had been a long time since she had captured a large creature, and soon the lizard men began to drag the bear away. The angels were completely amazed that Harako could take down such a large beast with a single blow. The maid then asked how he intended to cook the bear, and he said he had an idea. He would cook it with vegetables and wine, and they would boil it. He soon finished braising the giant bear meat in wine, and ate it happily while Lu and Tia were sad that their precious wine had been wasted. Harako also presented the breaded snake. He tried to fry the snake, and it ended up tasting like fried chicken. The angels loved the taste too. It was like eating chicken breast. Harako then went to the Flora laboratory in search of an antibacterial agent. He wanted something that would kill the microorganisms that could be harmful. Harako wanted to prevent his dishes from causing stomach aches or any kind of illness. Flora then starts looking through her medicine cabinet. She picks up a bottle and says that one dose would be enough to blow anything to the other side of the mountains. Harako then asks for something quieter, and she takes another bottle. She told him that it was safe to use on food, and he thanked her. Harako then asks how the miso production is going, but Flora says it's not going very well. She did everything exactly as he said, but when the fermentation started, the place exploded. Harako then says they could try again, which makes Flora happy. The next day, Harako goes to the chicken coop and starts collecting eggs. He then takes them to Flora's laboratory and starts beating the eggs and then mixes them with all the other ingredients until he creates his own mayonnaise. Flora liked it so much that she was eating pure mayonnaise. Harako then decided to help Flora with the miso as well, and after a great series of procedures, he put the dumplings to age in the basement. They would have to spend a few months for the flavor to become stronger, so they would have to be very patient. Then Lucy came in to say that they had visitors, a group of dwarves led by Donovan. He said they had heard about his high-quality alcohol and had come to share it with them. But soon the bunch of drunks who live with Harako are against giving away their valuable wine without getting anything in return. Donovan says that they didn't have any money, but they did have technology, as they had spent their lives studying alcohol production, and they had traveled a long way to get there. Donovan said that they had great plantations in that village, and he could help them turn them into a first-rate drink. Soon all the girls were interested, and Donovan began to show them how to make whiskey from corn. Harako finds the color strange, but Donovan says that it's only good after it's been left to age in a barrel. Then Harako decides to try it, and is surprised by the strong taste of the drink, making Donovan laugh because he thought he was too weak for it. Donovan then moved in and worked as their master brewer. The evening soon arrived, and Harako prepared a drinking party for the beastmen. Everyone was happy drinking and eating dishes with mayonnaise. Even Drime was so excited that her servant had to tie him up and take him away. Donovan thanked Harako for taking them in, and Harako said that everyone was happy that he was there. Donovan had already seen that many people in the village really liked to drink, and when he saw that there were finally grown men living in the village, Harako approached Donovan and asked if there were any girls there who caught his eye. Donovan says they're all pretty, but they're all too young for him. They wouldn't even grow a beard, so they weren't to his taste. Harako then realized that he wasn't going to get any relief from the women coming from the dwarves. Soon the day dawns, and we see a creature approaching from the sky. Both Harako and Zabuton notice it at first. Harako saw that it was a dragon, and that it didn't look friendly at all. He unleashes his spear, and decides to finish it off before it does any damage to his village. But then Drime headbutts the dragon, just as Harako is about to throw his weapon. Then another furious dragon comes along, and this time Harako doesn't hesitate and throws his spear high into the sky. It narrowly misses him, and just as Harako was about to hit him full on again this time, Drime's servant stood in front of him and asked him to wait, saying that he wasn't an enemy. Those were Drime's daughter and wife. It turned out that Droom's nocturnal escapades had aroused the suspicions of his family at home. Drime was reprimanded for sneaking out every night with things from his treasury and always staying out until the next day. Harako, on the other hand, was worried about him flying home drunk and even built him a house in the village. Drime tells her that it's all for the sake of their diplomatic relationship, but this conversation doesn't even work with his daughter, let alone his scary-looking wife. Drime then scolds them because it was foolish to think that he would have an affair like the one she imagined. Harako then enters the conversation and apologizes for the way he acted in the invasion. Drime then says that it wasn't his fault and orders the two to apologize. The daughter soon apologizes for almost burning down the village, thinking that her father was having an affair there, and the mother apologizes for almost killing the man who was pointing a spear at her daughter. Drime is happy to resolve the misunderstanding, but the two women soon reprimand him for sneaking out to drink. Harako then says goodbye to Drime's family when he sees that everything has been resolved. Drime soon becomes serious and asks if his wife has understood the importance of a good relationship with the village. His wife agreed that even though they were smaller in number, they had enough power to challenge challenge them. They didn't believe there was anyone capable of overpowering them. Dryme's daughter realized that her mother wouldn't even be able to defend herself against the spear. All she could do was dodge it, but in reality it wasn't even she who dodged it. Zabuton, who was an old friend, rescued her with her web. If it hadn't been for that, she wouldn't be there now. Dryme's wife gave her daughter Lasti an important mission. She wanted her daughter to live there and gather information. Her mother told Lasti that they couldn't ignore such power. She didn't expect her daughter to be able to suppress it, but she had to ensure that such power never turned against the dragon race. Dryme questions this, but his wife says she thought it was the right thing to do. Harako then says that he didn't even mind Lasti staying with him, and the girl then introduces herself again and says that she was anxious. Lasti then asked her what she should do, and so began her journey to work in the village. But they soon realized that a dragon is very strong and couldn't control himself to pick tomatoes or even wipe some dishes. Lasti then set to work with his strength control, but the slightest sneeze would make everything go up in smoke. Lasti was also having fun playing with the Beast Boys. Tia said that he didn't need to force her to do something she wasn't good at, but Harako was fulfilling a request from Dryme, who asked him to find a job for her daughter. Harako soon realizes that the Hell Wolves are scared, and Tia says that it's not just them. The cows and chickens have been too since the dragons started appearing. Harako then thinks that as much as Droom was a clown, it was normal for everyone to be afraid of dragons in that place. Tia says that it wasn't just power, dragons also had a lot of wisdom, and that gives Harako an idea. We soon see Beazle waiting for someone in the village, but he is greeted by Lasti. He recognized her instantly and broke out in a cold sweat. Beazle says he was there for some oranges, but Lasti says she's running low and asks if he wouldn't like some strawberries, totally terrified of facing a genuine dragon. Beazle asks for 10 boxes of strawberries, making Lasti very happy. Soon Lasti ends up being so persuasive that Beazle has even bought fruit he wasn't looking for. Beazle quickly says goodbye, as he wants to get out of there as quickly as possible. He doesn't even ask to check his order. And in the Demon King's fortress, Beazle tells the other generals about the 3 dragons in Teju village, and they decide to monitor the village, but careful not to be accused of treason. Beazle then says he has a plan. Beazle then welcomes his daughter Florin home and asks her to investigate the military power of the Teju village, but he asks her not to do anything rash. His safety is his #1 priority, but his daughter asked him not to worry as she was very confident of her magical abilities. Florin soon appeared in the sky over Teju village. At first glance, she only saw an ordinary village, but it was absurd to imagine that they had developed such a pleasant place. In a forest full of terrible monsters, Florin is soon greeted by Lasti and 2 angels. Lasti asked how long she would be staying, but Florin could only think of the terrifying fame that the dragon Lastismoon's name carried. Lasti soon took Flo to the vineyard, and Flo wondered why a dragon would brag about having cultivated an ordinary vineyard. They are soon interrupted by an angel descending from the sky, warning Lasti that a messenger was approaching. She then rushes off to take care of it. Leaving Florin alone, she decides to take the opportunity to go snooping on her own. She then encounters lizard men, beast people, Honest, and even dwarves. They would all be a challenge for the demons, but perhaps, with all their military strength, they might stand a chance. She soon arrives at Flora's laboratory, meeting the vampire Princess Lu, who she had heard was on the run, and soon Flo also saw Tia, the angel of annihilation. She had no idea why she would be in the same village as Lulacy. Along with Tia were the trio known as the 3 Killer Angels, not to mention the army of elves they had there. They had a reputation for being terrible man-eaters and loved to attack defenseless young men. We already know the end of those 3 furry puppies. Flo is also amazed that the hellhounds and the giant spiders have formed a single pack. Flo prided herself on being a proud magic user, but in that place, she had no confidence in winning. She then began to think about who the boss might be, and her obvious guess from the scale of power was Lastismoon. But there was a mayor above her, and this being was unknown to Florin. While she was thinking about the level of opponent the mayor would be, she came across Harako, who was walking with his axe. Still unaware, she wondered what a normal human was doing there. Harako offered to help, but Lasti left first, thinking he wouldn't need the help of a weak human. All this only to hear from Lasti later that he was the mayor, which surprised her, because he was only human. And Lasti says says that he was strong enough to defeat her mother, leaving Florin completely regretting having been rude to him. But since all the most powerful creatures in this world have a soft spot for dirt, Florin was soon willingly helping Lasti. And as for Harako, she was never rude to him again. And over time, the slime that purified their water began to multiply, creating other slimes of various colors. They were so harmless that they didn't even realize how much they had reproduced, and by the time they realized it, one of the slimes had already drunk a whole barrel of wine. And that was the origin of the village's first trial. An innocent slime who drank where he didn't belong against a bunch of slime. The poor slime was unanimously found guilty, and soon they began to consider his punishment the most talked about being burning. Harako took pity and considered just arresting him, which revolted the girls. But young Florin soon intervened on Slime's behalf and ended up absorbing him, saying that even if he was punished, his actions wouldn't change. This was the village's first female lawyer. From then on, Slime began to show up at their parties and celebrations to drink with the others. As long as it was just one of them, they wouldn't have a problem. The problem would be if more of them got a taste for drinking. Later, Harako was enjoying the scenery with a basket of vegetables and fruit, and soon his stomach began to growl with hunger. The girls were preparing their dishes, and others were already eating. Harako noticed that there were some mushrooms that didn't exist in his village because they were native to this world. Harako said that if they had seafood, such as fish, crabs, and monkfish, Harako already had an idea of what dishes he wanted to prepare with the seafood. Lulicy orders Flora to start looking. While the girls looked a little terrified, Tia wondered if he was really thinking of eating a crab, as she had already faced one, and they were quite scary in that world. Florin said that there was a port city within the Demon King's boundaries. All Harako had to do was head south through the forest, as it was their custom to trade with products from the sea. Lasti offered to take Florin to the city to meet a merchant she knew there. Soon all the girls begin to make their preparations. Soon Florin goes after Lasti, and Harako is left alone with Lulicy. Harako was pleased with how hard they all worked when it came to his food, which made him happy that they all enjoyed his food so much. 3 days and nights later, Florin and Lasti brought the merchant with them, Michael Goraun, the president of the Goraun Company. The company is located in the city of Shashado in the Demon Kingdom. Harako introduces himself as the mayor and thanks him for coming to their village. Michael then shows him the products he brought with him from the city. Michael says that the seaweed Harako asked for is quite common, but the fishermen didn't collect it. They usually threw it back into the sea, but now that he knew Harako was interested, he was going to ask him to collect it and dry it for Harako. Michael says he had 3 reasons for his visit. The first was to say hello and thank you for the communication to do business. The second was to suggest more opportunities to trade goods and do business. And the third was to become the village's official supplier. This meant that he wanted to be the intermediary between all the trade between the Teju village and the rest of the world. Michael says that all of Harako's crops were very attractive, so if he traded them, he would get a much higher value. Lulicy takes the lead and says that many people would like to trade with the village, so Michael gives her a list of foods that his company sells. Later that day, Michael was well satisfied with the subjects covered in Lasti's negotiations, but when he talks about alcohol, Lasti gives him a hard time. He then apologizes and flies off with Lasti. While Harako recognized that he was indeed skilled in trade, they were happy that, even though he was handling things for them, they would have a lot more products now. Harako thought the man looked pretty scared, which wasn't surprising considering the residents of Teju village. Michael took a deep breath. He looked calm on the outside, but inside he was completely terrified. We are soon taken 3 days earlier to the town of Shashado, where Michael is told he has visitors without an appointment. The helper says that the visitors have brought him goods from their farm. At first he didn't want to go and meet the farmers, but then his intuition as a merchant told him that this was a great opportunity. He decides to meet them. Florin soon approaches the merchant, and he realizes that if he hadn't met her, his head would have rolled off his head before he knew it. He then asks who the people like her were, and Lasti introduces himself with his dragon name, which reminds him of the fame of the Mad Dragon. They soon showed him the baskets they wanted to sell him, and if he liked, they'd like to take him to meet the mayor. Michael didn't seem so happy about trading with 2 monsters, but as soon as he discovered the baskets and saw the famous fruits that everyone was talking about, he saw a great chance of trade that outweighed the danger. Michael Michael then said that if they were after seafood, he would get them all they wanted, as that was the job of a merchant. He then asked his employee to pack everything for the trip, as he himself wanted to travel to make the delivery. Florin then says that the delivery should be to the Teju village in the Forest of Death. Lasty said he could take everything and gave him a lift. This leaves Michael a little uncertain about the risk. Lasty soon left for the village, and there he met Lasty's parents, the 4 assassin angels, and even the vampire princess. By the end of the trip, Michael was completely traumatized. Even though it was the best deal of his life, his body was terrified of seeing so many enemies. That evening, Hirako had prepared a new dish for the girls. He then thought he would order squid and shrimp next time. The next day, Hirako was facing the 3rd dragon that was attacking the village. When he fired, the dragon dodged the first spear, but ended up falling for the second. Hirako then goes after it with his hell wolves and soon comes across a white-haired girl. He asks her why she burned down the forest, and while she's thinking of a reason, Drime appears to resolve the situation. Drime soon explains that the woman's name was Hakurin, and that she was his older sister, even though she looked much younger. His sister says it's his fault because she knew he was giving Lasty away as a bride. When Hirako asks about Drime, he says it was a mistake. It must have been something he said when he was drunk. Harukin said she had come there to see what kind of person she was going to marry. Hirako asks why she didn't visit them normally, but Harukin just wanted to make sure the mayor was as strong as everyone said he was. Drime says that she also came to relieve her anger, and she confirms it because she was furious that her niece had found a husband before her. Hiraka stops Harukin's fit of rage by holding her head tightly so that she can put away everything she has destroyed. Later that evening, Harukin was annoyed at her brother's luck in always eating such delicious food at Hirako's house. Lasty soon goes to Hirako to apologize for her aunt's behavior. Harukin soon calls the mayor over for a game of mahjong. He said he didn't even need to hear the rules, but wanted to know what they could bet. Hirako asks him to take it easy, but Droom asks what he used to bet on when he played mahjong. Hirako says that even if he wanted to, he wouldn't have anything to bet on. Hirako says that since he didn't have anything to bet on, he thought of a game of strip mahjong. Hirako regretted it, but it was too late. The 3 dragons were already determined to play, and he felt a creepy vibe in the air. Later, Leah and the others were spying on the strip mahjong game. Hirako was feeling embarrassed, especially when he remembered that the dragons were super competitive and hated to lose. Even Harukin, who had never played, was overconfident. While Hirako was down to his last piece of clothing, he even wondered if they were using some kind of magical trickery. Hirako was seeing all the chances, but the memories of his defeats were haunting him, so he said that he would never beat the dragons if he remained paralyzed with fear. Then he decides to act, but it's no use, and he loses his last piece of clothing. All the girls chant for him to take off his clothes. He then took it out at once, sending the mines into a frenzy. Back at the Demon King's fortress, the generals were speculating about the dragons that had appeared in the village. One of the generals asked the Demon King Galgard if he had any idea what to do, as they already had the power to take over an entire country. But Galgard was more concerned about his daughter's mood. But the general says they should focus on preparing their military forces immediately. Even the demon general Randon had signed his letter of resignation. Soon Harukin begins teaching the beast children math and apple division. It turned out that Harukin had moved there as if it were normal, and to everyone's surprise, she was extremely skilled but very lazy until after spending a whole day digging holes and filling them up again, she gave in and became the school teacher, and she seemed to be very good with children. But there was still one more race of hotties to appear, and soon a bunch of snake women showed up with various gifts, asking Hirako to spare their lives. According to them, Hirako's younger wolves had invaded the cave where the Lamias were staying and destroyed everything. They then agreed to exchange the precious gems the blades had offered for various fruits. After that, they returned home, Hirako only asking them to wear clothes next time they came, and soon after, Hirako ended up turning the Lamia into his own delivery service. And now Hirako invites Lucy over so that they can grow more food. Back at the demon fortress, the servants were reporting everything they had discovered about Florin's life in the village in a very exaggerated way, as they said it as if she were a hostage there. The princess then decides to take over the village and defeat Florim. On a night when the 2 moons were shining brightly in the sky, Florim was in her room, making notes notes when Beazle appeared from a magic circle in the sky. Beazle noticed that his daughter was very busy, and she said that she was taking care of all the village accounts. When asked why she was there, Beazle says that the demon princess was gathering troops to carry out a military campaign. Florum asks why she was doing something like that. Beazle says that some of the princess followers had filled her head with false truths. She had been advised by daughters of the most powerful families in the demon kingdom. Florum asks where they were planning to attack and is shocked to discover that they were talking about the Teju village. Florum says that she had sent him several reports about the military strength of the Teju village. Her father says that he has already tried to get the demon king to put a stop to it. Florum offers to go and convince her, but her father says that it was all. They wanted to make her see them as enemies of the demon kingdom. Beazle then asked his daughter to stop their invasion, which would take place tomorrow. The army numbered 300 men, and Beazle imagined that if anyone were to show their strength, they would give up, especially if it were Lasti and Harem. Beazle asked her to be careful, that they didn't find out about the invasion, as it would be the end of the demon kingdom. Florum then realized that he would need to show the difference in the scale of power, without actually mobilizing the village's military power. The next day, a battalion was stopped by just 3 Lamias. Florum then decides to take the princess's advisors to meet this mayor. Florum tells them that they are from the demon kingdom and would like to move to the Teju village. The girls are frightened when they hear that they will have to work as if their lives depended on it. Harako wonders why they are so sad, as if their lives are over. Florum says he'll keep them working for her, but if they did anything against the village, Harako could tell them she wouldn't care. After sorting out the 3 girls, Harako asks about the young woman sitting on the throne. Who was the princess? Florum says he wanted to show her how things work in the village. The princess introduces herself as Yuri. Florum says she was only there out of concern for her, and asks Harako not to give her special treatment either. Harako then leaves them in Florum's hands and leaves. Florum then says that if they work properly, their transgressions will be forgiven. Florum warns them that even the princess won't get special treatment. She'll just be Yuri. The princess accepts without much question, as she hasn't been called by her name for a long time, and asks to see the village. Florum soon begins to show her the crops, and the princess is enchanted by the cuteness of the feral children. Soon the girls get to know the trees from which the apples grow. The 3 girls start bragging about eating apples, and it doesn't take long for them to start thinking about taking over the village. Then Lasti introduces herself to Yuri, and Yuri says she's very pretty for a dragon. Meanwhile, the 3 noblewomen were saying that it was absurd that 3 noblewomen should be living in the middle of nowhere like this. They were determined to escape the first chance they got, so they took advantage of the night to try to jump the fence, but soon ran into the wolves from hell, and when they tried in the daytime, they ran into Zabuton. Soon the 3 of them give in and promise to work and do their best. Princess Yuri was amazed to see a wolf from hell, as just one was dangerous enough to cause serious damage to any town it entered. Soon Yuri began to play with the wolf, throwing a frisbee for the wolf cubs to catch. Yuri says how impressed she was with that village. She had no idea there was such an impressive place outside the demon realm. Yuri regrets trying to bring war and conflict to a wonderfully peaceful place. Florum said that Yuri shouldn't be surprised if the dragons attacked, since she was going to strike first. Yuri agreed, and Florum asked why she did it, and Yuri says that it was her own fault. One day, she just disappeared from the demon realm and was very worried when she heard that she had become a hostage. Yuri tells her to stop acting as if they hadn't been friends since they were children, but as time went by, he began to treat her like a stranger, and Florum apologized to Yuri and said that she would keep her informed from now on. Soon the 2 went home to eat, and the evening arrived at Harako's house. The 3 noble women were completely happy and used to each other. Harako is happy, as he thought it would take longer. Soon Lulacy arrives, asking about the new girls, and Harako wonders if she's been like that all day, and she says that her transformation wasn't working very well. Soon the feral people are happy that Princess Yuri, she was excited to start work. Her friends ask her not to do any manual labor. The princess says that her friends should also join her. They try to tell her that their job is in the town hall, but the children say that they will show her how to do it. Soon the 3 of them start getting in the way, eating and even resting together with the children. Soon it's time for Yuri to leave, but she promises to come back to visit everyone and gets some food from the fierce people. Florum Florum and Harako say goodbye, and the princess asks if her servants are going to come back, but they say that they still have a lot to learn in that village. Details that they were saying with their mouths full. Beazle soon takes the princess away with his transportation magic, and Harako says that she seemed to have enjoyed her time there. The king then decided to talk about Yuri. He had noticed that his daughter was very busy after she returned from the castle. She never had time to talk to him. Beazle said that the princess was interested in diplomatic relations and that it was normal for daughters to grow up before their parents realized it. The king is furious to imagine that his daughter has met a man and swears that he will put an end to it once and for all. Then Beazle reminds the king that it's time for the meeting. In the Teju village, the day soon arrived for harvesting the post-winter crop. Harako was surprised by the mountain of elements. It was just the ones they hadn't managed to get into the warehouse. Lasti and Harukan asked to send some to their families. Tia was surprised to discover that Harukan's parents were the Dragon Emperor 12 and the Hurricane Dragon Raymalin. Tia never thought the dragons would be so connected. Soon Lasti was making deliveries to his father and also to the city of Shashato. Michael asked Lasti to exterminate a monster that was hindering trade, and Lasti gladly did so. She even got some meat for Harako. Meanwhile, Harukan took care of getting the food to his parent. Later, a bunch of dark-skinned elves appear. Harako wonders if they are dark elves, but they say they are mountain elves. He says Japanese isn't racist there. The elf says that they used to live in the mountains, but it had been very difficult to find food lately, so they wanted to live there. Harukan said that she was the one who gave them the idea to come. The young elf said that she hadn't meant to bother them, but Harako said that wasn't it. He was just worried about where they would live until they built a house for them. In the end, Harako said he was happy to welcome them there. Soon the group of mountain elves became part of the village, but the elves soon discovered that their hunting skills were of little use against the high-level beasts of the Forest of Death. Harako asked them not to try too hard, and soon she asked what he was doing. He was trying to make a pot out of water and clay and then heat it up, but it soon broke and fell apart. He says that the soil wouldn't work, and the elf offers to find some Algerian for him, because as she came from the mountains, they understood a lot about the earth and its derivatives. Harako then asks if it wouldn't be dangerous for her to look in that area. The elf said that if she didn't have to fight, she would be fine, as she knew very well how to escape, and Harako made her promise to be careful, and as a result of her work, Harako finally had her clay pot. Harako then asked if they could make other things, and the elf offered to help her. While Zabuton was preparing baby things, the elves reported that they had found another cave, different from the ones where the Lamias lived. Leah asks permission to send an investigation party, and Harako asks if it wouldn't be dangerous. Leah says that's why she needed to send a group to investigate. The wolves seemed very excited about the action, so a group of 2 wolves, 3 elves, and a lizard man set off to investigate and explore the dungeon. Harako then made a men's bathroom, so the dwarves as well as the lizard men could use the bath. The beast children were the first to share the bath with Harako. Outside, Florum and the lizard men came across the 3 noblewomen trying to get into Harako's bath. According to them, they thought it was the female bath. They then confessed that they wanted to wash the mayor's back. Florum then says that they were the lowest rung in the village. They couldn't expect to sneak past everyone and go all the way to the top. Florum says that was the girl's last warning. Soon the investigation group returned from the dungeons. They said they needed to send an extermination party because there was a large snake living there, just like the one that was fighting the bear in the forest. The elves really wanted its flesh to ensure the continuation of their race, and they explained that eating snake flesh would make your body overflow with vitality. It's like that medicine your friend buys every Friday night saying it's for a headache. The elves are very excited to carry out this extermination campaign. Harako tries to delay the trip as long as he can, and soon fall is gone and winter is getting closer. When Harako arrived, his aunt and the beast girl were in Lu's room, who was in bed. He asked if she was all right, and she said it was nothing serious. She thought it was just a cold. Lucy says it's just a bit of nausea and a slight fever. The beast girl, wondering what it could be, asks her if she's had any strange food cravings. The girls seem to sense it right away, and soon Harako asks them what she had, and then Lucy receives congratulations on her baby, causing astonishment. A while after that very surprising night, everyone starts the day working in peace. Harako stretches out feeling the sun on his his skin. Then Lucy comes out too and Harako asks her how she's feeling. Harako recalls that the village went crazy when they found out that Lucy was pregnant. Harako seems surprised. As she was the calmest of them all, she tells him not to worry and goes to check the herb garden. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Harako had been dismissed by the maids, his only duty being to keep an eye on the surroundings. We discovered that it was impossible for Harako to wake up first in the morning, as the Oni maids always tried to wake up earlier than him. This left her with frightening dark circles under her eyes. In the morning, Anne would always call Harako to report problems, such as Slime having had another barrel of wine, and after finishing his rounds, Harako sat down at the table with everyone. He noticed that Flora wasn't sleeping well, and she said that she wasn't making any progress with the production of her miso. The second breakfast group were the maids, and the second were those who hadn't managed to arrive on time. Hakurin didn't even make it to the third group. Soon the angel arrives to report that Kiro has captured 3 rabbits that tried to break in. Harako thinks that angels, as committed as they are to doing their job, are very lazy when they're off duty. After saying hello to Kiro and Zabuton, Harako goes to work in the plantation. Harako soon finds some garden pests with the help of Kiro's children and soon washes them away from his plantation. Harako was very pleased to see his crops bearing fruit. Soon everyone gathered for lunch. Lunch wasn't common in that world. Tia and Lu didn't usually do it. The elves were afraid of running out of food, and the beast girls were afraid of being expelled if they ate too much. But today they are all happy to have lunch. Soon Harako authorizes them to increase the ration for the cows that have just given birth to their calves and says he'll talk to Flo about taking care of the excess deposits soon. Harako returns to his work after lunch. Harako plants a field of flowers, and with the wood he starts making toys for the children, furniture for the girls, and wooden swords for training his army of girls. Harako then tries to train his skills with swords or weapons, but is a complete failure, unlike the elf. However, when she used her spear, the result was quite complete. At dusk, Harako was dining on a new dish that the Oni maids had created. He eats it and pours himself a mug of alcohol to swallow and replace the bad taste in his mouth. Then Florum delivers a letter from Yuri wanting to eat more apples and asking for a dress made by Zabuton. After settling those matters, Harako went to relax in the bath after dinner. He was very happy with a men's bath, as the women's bath was always crowded and uncomfortable. Soon it was time to go home, but it was the most tense time for Harako, as all the girls were spying on him. When he entered his room, he called out for help, and the girls revealed his cover. Before going to sleep, Harako thanks God for his life and falls asleep. The next day, Harako goes to Denova's alcohol production. He used to imagine dwarves laughing and drinking, but in fact he was very serious about his work. Harako tastes a drink he thinks is good, but Donovan says it has lost its taste and aroma. Harako was very happy with Donovan's dedication to his work. While Harako was thinking about how to increase the production of grapes as Donovan had asked, the beast girl came running up to him. She says that a strange man appeared. He was prostrating himself in front of the god statues that Harako had made in the tree. What was impressive was that he easily got past the village defenses. Lucy soon recognized him as her father, and Harako took him inside. There she says that he was like her and Flora's grandfather. Her grandfather said that the secret of appearing young was to erase his memories. He left the important stuff and erased the rest from his mind. The man then apologized for entering without permission, but a certain presence attracted him. The statue of the god, he says, he met when he was sent to that world in a vampire's body, but he no longer remembered what the god looked like, whether he was a young man or an old one. But Harako had been very precise in his sculptures. Grandpa couldn't hide how much he wanted that statue. Harako said he couldn't give him the village statue, but said that if he wanted to, he could make one for him. This makes Grandpa very happy, and soon he is carving a new statue, and Grandpa wraps it up and puts it on his back to go home. Harako refuses to accept any payment from God, and before leaving, Grandpa says goodbye to his granddaughters and thanks Harako again. Soon the vampire lord arrives at a church. He was there 50 years ago. It took time for the leader of the church to go bald. The vampire lord says that he has come to make changes. He wanted to consecrate his new statue and place it in the most special place in the temple, removing the statue of the creator. The temple leader was amazed and asked for the name of the sculptor to place it next to the statue, but the Lord said that he wasn't the type who liked that kind of fame. Meanwhile, in the Teju village, Harako was sneezing because they were talking about him, and Lu had been given a piano by his grandfather, so the lizard men put it in the dining hall. The three noblewomen were amazed because it was a very important piano, so important that they were too terrified to play it. They then ask Harako for a new piano, an older, less important one, so he asks Michael to bring one for them to practice on, and soon the second piano catches the attention of all the girls who practice their melodies on it. Even at bedtime, Harako's sleep is interrupted. The first spring morning begins with everyone working on the vegetable harvest. Harako is working hard and doing his best. Soon it's time for lunch and everyone gets up, and Lu comes to call Harako to join them for lunch. As they sit together in the shade, she tells him he should take a break too. While he says he can't control himself, we already know where her pregnancy came from. She asks him to be careful not to collapse from working so hard, and he asks if it's okay for her to walk like that, and she says it's good for exercise. The girls all had tips for Lu to deal with her pregnancy, which put Harako at ease. It soon got dark and the girls continued to worry about Lucy. The girls alternated between joy and envy. Lucy saying that the only thing that bothered her was that she couldn't drink alcohol. Later, the three angels asked Harako, on behalf of their aunt and the others, to sell all his alcohol as all. The girls had decided to support Lucy in her time without drinking, and they were really suffering from not being able to drink with their food. But Harako said they didn't need to sell it, they just needed to let the alcohol age in the cellar so it would taste much better when they could all drink it. Donovan wondered if they had done something wrong because no one drank alcohol anymore, no matter how much they liked it. But then Harako explains the situation and motivates Donovan to work even harder so that everyone drinks until they get cirrhosis when Lucy's son is born. Later, everyone was enjoying the sun, some in the hot tub and others in the shade of a parasol. Harako went to Lucy's room as the sun was too strong. He asks if it's almost time. Harako noticed a flower she had gotten from Tia and the angels, which made the room feel cold. Soon one of the mountain elves arrives, offering a medicine from the elves to bring good energy and vigor. Lasty soon brings a gem that helps with the magical recovery she stole from her father's treasure room. Soon all the girls are pampering Lucy with puddings, flower crowns, and soups. Even Kuro brings a dead rabbit, and the Zabuton cubs bring baby clothes. One of the lizard men offered his blood, but Lucy's teeth couldn't bear to pierce his hard scales. Harako was looking at the toys Donovan had given his son when he noticed that Lucy was feeling unwell. Soon the maids begin an operation to help Lucy give birth, and one of the beast girls holds her hand. Harako retreated to his room, feeling useless because there was nothing he could say to help. Harako then decided to go to the god statues. Harako remembered how alone he used to be, and now he had everyone there. He soon goes to his room, where all the maids introduce him to their son. Lucy calls him over to hold his son, and he reaches for him, still scared. Soon the baby moves and smiles in his father's arms. The girls say that the baby was happy to meet his father. Harako remembers his sick past and asks that his son never go through that and wishes that he grows up strong and healthy. Lucy assures him that they will raise the boy to be strong. Soon the days passed. Harako went back to work while his son, Alfred, was pampered by the girls. Harako remembered how he had started living alone in that place and how his friends had started to appear, adding to the village and making his life happier, and now he was a father. Harako then thought it was time to repay everyone's gifts and care for his son. Soon, Harako gathered everyone together to introduce a new system in the village. Small reward medals. She could use them to buy any goods she wanted. Harako thought that one day his village would need an official currency, because as mayor he had to deal with all the village's distribution. This overburdened him, so he decided that transactions would be made using coins. Harako would destroy them for a trial period, all of them starting with 3 coins, Kuro and Zabuton getting 30 for their families. Harako had prepared the coins by hand. Some people exchanged them for wine. Immediately, others bought material objects. Others bought weapons that Drime had brought as gifts. Even Kuro was trading, and Harako got more furniture orders to make. After attending to the wolves, Harako goes to stay with Lu and his son for a while. One of the beast children tries to buy a baby for 1 coin, which opens up an opportunity for Leah, but Harako quickly says that it wouldn't be possible, so they decide to rent the mayor's mayor's house for a day. And soon it's nightfall and time to celebrate the birth of Hirako's son. Everyone is very much looking forward to the drink. Lucy felt guilty that they had waited for her, but Hirako reassured her. Soon Hirako realizes that Lucy is holding a hammer, and she says that Donovan asked her to bring it for him. Soon Donovan and the dwarves bring him a barrel of special wine that he made for Lucy and Hirako, and he soon understands what the hammer was for. He then uses the hammer to break the lid. Hirako then shouts for everyone to drink, and so the party continues, with Drime slurping the coconut and the girls enjoying themselves. Donovan goes to find out what they thought of the wine, but Lucy says she can't drink while she's breastfeeding, so she'll let the girls drink it for her. Donovan then has the idea of bottling some before everyone drinks it all. Donovan will take care of everything while Hirako says he dreams of being able to drink wine with his son. Flora, for her part, was about to steal her nephew for herself. In the demon realm, the three demons were accepting that with the birth of their son, attacking Hirako's village was no longer an option. They even consider offering someone as a bride for Hirako's son, but the king abhors the idea of offering his daughter. Back in the port city, Michael was also concerned about congratulating Hirako on the birth of her son, to maintain a good business relationship with the Teju village. In the village, Hirako was enjoying another calm and happy morning, watching the angels flying in the sky. His aunt asks him if he has a hangover, but he says it's nothing. Soon the girls ask for a meeting to talk about people who want to live in Hirako's village, coming from all the kingdoms. Hirako and Lu soon realize that they would have to make another village. Hirako says it won't be that easy, but they're all willing to do their best. What makes him agree? He agrees to talk more about the people in the village, and that's it until next season.